Also tonight, a little bit of an update on the jaw-dropping national security story that broke late last night in the New York Times. This was the news that the president has been knowingly using a private, unsecured cell phone to make phone calls as president, even though he has been warned by White House personnel that it's a serious security risk and that foreign spy services can listen in on those calls. In fact, the New York Times found in its report, they were told for their report that China's spy service has been not only regularly listening in on the president's calls, Chinese spies have started a new and active influence operation to use people who are in contact with the president to try to shift U.S. policy in China's direction. They can do this in a way that nobody's ever been able to do this to a U.S. president before, because President Trump is reportedly insisting that he should still speak on his private unsecured cell phone despite the security risks. And because of that, the Chinese know who he is speaking to. They know what he and his interlocutors are saying in those phone calls. They know what arguments he's making and what he's hearing. And now the Chinese are shaping those conversations to benefit the Chinese government. Just an astonishing story, right? After that story broke in the New York Times last night, a former White House chief information officer from the George W. Bush administration told Fast Company, quote, "If true, this may be the largest, most significant breach of White House communications in U.S. history." Now, the one still terrible silver lining in the New York Times' report from last night was the part where current Trump administration officials tried to sell the New York Times on the fact that they were, quote, confident that Trump was not actually spilling secrets in these calls that are monitored by the Chinese government. They're confident in that, quote, because President Trump rarely digs into the details of the intelligence he has shown and is not well versed in the operational specifics of military or covert activities. I mean, this is supposed to be the silver lining. You can see why this is still terrible, right? You can see why this might be cold comfort. Don't worry about the president spilling anything in terms of national security or really important secrets. And these calls that the Chinese are listening to, don't worry about that. You know, he can't really absorb anything all that secret. He doesn't pay attention to his briefings. That was the glass half full part of this amazing story in the Times last night. Well, the glass is not all that full. NBC News reports today that, in fact, President Trump has been disclosing sensitive information in these calls that he has been making on his insecure private phone. And these that the Chinese have apparently been listening in on all this time. Current U.S. officials tell NBC they have been worried for months about the sensitive information that President Trump has been disclosing when he makes calls on that insecure line, including, I kid you not, to people like cable news hosts at the Fox News channel. Lock her up. Lock her up.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.